The GOAT of college football coaches continues to show his increasing level of paranoia to the world. The Pac 12 continues to use smoke, mirrors, and narratives to make everybody believe that there's a media deal out there that will keep the league together in the long term. And your boy is about to pull his hair out at the lack of reality and truth being spoken about anywhere in college football right now. We're going to talk about it all in this first edition of the Week in Review right here on the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Welcome back to the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Watkins. And if you love college football, you know you're in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button, like our videos, and don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss one moment of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. So welcome to our first ever Hall of Fame College Football Week in Review. Going to talk about a few things, most notably, I guess, going to get into some of this stuff about this SEC 8-game, 9-game league schedule. The debate's been going on this past week in Destin at the SEC spring meetings. It appears as if you're going to have the SEC sticking with an 8-game schedule. There's been a lot of backlash. A lot of folks are saying a lot of things, and none of it is good heading towards the SEC. And here's why. You know, and I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to be straight here. We talked about this a lot. We talked about this. Obviously, we understand what this whole scenario is over. The bottom line to me is simple. A ton of it has to boil down to the fact that I think it was said pretty well by the head coach of Missouri that a lot of this is about saving coaches' asses. Okay, let's just be real about what this is. And that includes Nick Saban, Mr. Top of the Heap, 7 national championships. Nick Saban, who's complaining and bitching and complaining whenever it came to the 6-3-3 format and that 9-game schedule. He wasn't happy with his fixed opponents in Tennessee, LSU, Auburn. It couldn't get more obvious to me that this man is more and more year after year, every year that they don't win a national title, and particularly since Kirby Smart, his former assistant coach, has won back-to-backs. This is something that is bothering the coach, and really, I think it has him paranoid. Plain and simple, it's got him paranoid. And, I know that I'm going to get some flack off of this. I'm going to get some flack off of this, and I don't really care, okay? Because I got to tell you, I never felt like there would ever be a time that Nick Saban, the king, the guy who's done more, if he stopped coaching today, I don't know how you could find a coach that would ever catch this man as the greatest of all time. And that includes Kirby Smart. And Kirby may be the best right now, which is arguable. But he has built up a juggernaut there at Georgia, and he still isn't going to catch Nick Saban as the greatest college football coach in history. It's not going to happen. And yet, with every passing day since they won their last one during the COVID year in 2020, they lose the next year in the national title game. They don't get back to, and get this, here's the thing, for all the bluster and BS that you've heard, that, and I know that there's some other content creators that I'm tight with that are in disagreement with me on this, but I got to tell you, they missed the playoff by 2 points. 1 point losing to Tennessee on the road, 1 point losing to LSU on the road. They don't get a chance to get back into the playoff. I think everybody knows, had it been an extended playoff and Alabama's in it, more than likely they're back in that championship game. There's not a single team in that 14 playoff that probably would have touched Alabama aside from Georgia. Nevertheless, Saban is paranoid about this. And this whining and complaining and bitching and moaning about the schedule and about the way things are and wham. It drives me insane. It drives me insane. Bill O'Brien was not your problem. You get this. They lost by freaking 1 point each game, which was what kept them out. And all of a sudden, everybody's freaked out. Now, of course, everybody's a little bit worried about the quarterback situation coming into this season. Somehow, I feel like Nick Saban and the Alabama football team will find a way to stay relevant. But yet, even he, who has for years, Nick Saban has been a quote unquote proponent of a 9-game SEC schedule, a 9-game SEC. He said it over and over and over again. And now that they have an opportunity to do this, they're not doing it. They've decided that it's more important to make sure, quote unquote, that it's going to be the best positioning for the SEC to get the most teams into the playoff moving forward. I think that's retarded. I just got to tell you, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And the reason is they've already dominated the entrance into it. You're on average, they have two teams per season in the playoff. There's been 9 of them. More times than not, they've had 2 teams. As it goes to 12, and with, obviously we're going to talk a little bit about the Pac-12 being essentially toast here in a little while. But in mind you of that, the new, right now, looking at the new 12-team playoff, you're looking at a situation where the highest ranked Power 5, the highest ranked conference champions, the 5 highest ranked conference champions will be in the playoff, guaranteed. Okay. Then it goes to the highest ranked group of 5 is going to get somebody in there. And then they're going to start filling up with the top ranked teams. Essentially, what you're looking at, if everything stayed the same with the Pac-12, you'd probably still get 3 SEC schools per season in this 12-team thing, and probably sometimes 4 on a year-to-year basis. How they're feeling like having, and with a better strength of schedule, having 9 games and having 2 other blue blood schools in Oklahoma and Texas in the conference, how that's supposedly going to hurt the SEC's chances is beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. I wanted to go back and show you exactly what Nick Saban was talking about during the SEC spring meetings this week, what he talked about when he was asked about this.
Nick, I think you favored a 9-game schedule for a while. Do you still feel that way about the SEC schedule?
I don't. I think whatever happens. I think there's so many things that probably sort of go into this in terms of 8 games versus 9 games, including TV contracts and things that are way beyond my scope of visibility, that I'm sure a lot of those things will, sort of factor into it. But I still am always of the opinion that we should pay all Division I games. I've said this for years. So whether there's 60 teams in the Power 5 conferences or 70 teams or however many there are, that it's better for fans, it's better for strength of schedule that we all play all Power 5, games. So however we get to that, I think that's the best thing. I think one of the more difficult things with going to 9 games is, we've tried to schedule 2 out-of-conference Power 5 games to try to improve our strength of schedule. over the next, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And if we go to 9 games, we'll have to unwind that. So my deal was always play more SEC games because we couldn't get other people to schedule. So now I think there are more people in tune to scheduling. So having a balance is probably the most important thing.
So what he's saying there, he's backtracking. Let's make no mistake about it, folks. He's backtracking here. And I'm not just putting this all off on Nick Saban. But what I'm going to tell you is that nobody wants to hear Nick Saban complaining. Okay. This is the last person in the world who should be complaining about anything when it comes to coaching and the way that you've got it. Now, before, if you remember, he had said with the 9 games being played in the SEC once Oklahoma and Texas entered the league, there was all this speculation and even probably some leaks to Ross Dellinger as far as what the schedule was going to look like. Okay. What the permanent schedule was going to look like. I am going to go through it real quick. 366 means 3 permanent fixed opponents, which essentially means rivals. You're going to play those teams every year. Then the remaining 12 teams in the league, you will rotate every other season, which will allow. So every year, Oklahoma's going to get to play Texas as they always would. They'd have another, say, tier 1, quote unquote, rival. It's been rumored that it would have been Florida, which kind of cool if you think about it. You would have expected possibly Texas A&M because of their, history in the Big 12 together. That isn't something that A&M wanted. And then you would also probably have that lower tier rival in like Missouri, because of the fact that Missouri isn't in that top half, the traditional top half of the league. So essentially what you're looking at, it would have been Missouri, probably not Arkansas. I mean, there's a possibility of Arkansas, and then it would have been Texas is obviously always going to be there. And then it would have been either Florida, possibly Florida if you're listening to Ross Dellinger. Now, for Alabama, it came up and it was going to be some of these programs have been in the SEC so long and these rivalries are so long standing, it was pretty clear who their main rivals are going to be. If you look at Georgia, they're playing against Auburn. That's the oldest rivalry in the South. They would play them every year. They would continue to play Florida every year in the world's largest cocktail party all the time. No doubt about it. Then they would also play, I think it was going to be South Carolina, would have been their third one, right? If you look at Alabama, it's even more obvious. The Iron Bowl is not going to go away. It still won't. Tennessee, that schedule or that rivalry game has been around third Saturday in October, longer than most of us have been alive. Okay. So they're going to play that game every year. Then the third one was rumored to be LSU. That was the report from Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated. He's pretty plugged into the SEC. Chances are that was probably, it makes sense because at least since Nick Saban has been in the SEC, when they went to the divisions, they've been in the same division of the SEC, the West Division, so they've played each other every year anyway. It's also become a huge rivalry. You've had multiple national titles for LSU, obviously multiple for Nick Saban and Alabama as well. Now, Saban complained about it. And if you look at what he was saying, let me pull this one up too. He was speaking to Ross Dellinger, says, I've always been a proponent for playing more conference games, but if you play more games, I think you have to get the 3 fixed opponents right. They're giving us Tennessee, Auburn, and LSU. I don't know how they come to that. Well, Nick, you're the only one that doesn't know how they come to that. Okay. Because again, been playing Tennessee longer than anybody here has been alive, probably. You've been playing Auburn just as long, I would say. in-state rival. That one, it's one of the top watched rivalries on television every year. In fact, it's number 1 or 2 according to most metrics that you look at. That one wasn't going to go away. He's complaining, and it essentially what it boiled down to, 2 of those 3 rivals, they lost to last season. That's what it boils down to. So it pissed him off. So all of a sudden now, even after, I mean, I can go back to 2010 through 2011 and remember Nick Saban saying the SEC should just be playing 9. And mind you, the rest of the country's playing, the rest of the Power 5 conferences play 9-game conference schedules as well. Only the SEC doesn't. Now, because the SEC is the big dog, the one that wins most championships, literally the toughest league in the country, at least to hear the SEC talking about that, it hasn't hurt them to only play 8 because they play a tough championship game. They play a tough schedule, especially if you're the West. Generally, it's been the tougher of the sides of the divisions. In the East, has generally been dominated by either Florida or Georgia. But here's what the deal is. That's going away either way. There will no longer will there be divisions, and they will still break up the schedule the same way, except for now with an 8-game schedule, which appears to be what they voted for so far. That's what's been announced. They're going to stick with that, at least for now, is that instead of having 3 fixed opponents, you're only going to have 1, which means that he gets his way in this complaint and will only get the Iron Bowl every year, the one team that he's been beating more often. And don't make no mistake about it. When he complained about Tennessee, he was saying, well, you should look at it traditionally as, the entirety of the SEC. Well, you beat them 15 times in a row until they beat you this past season, Nick. So that's pretty transparent as to what your real problem was. Because it's clear that over the last 20 years, Tennessee has not been one of the best teams in the SEC. In fact, they struggle more years than not. Okay? This is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thought all the way around. Now, then you've got the LSU deal. Yeah, you lost to them and Brian Kelly. I can understand you being a little concerned with Brian Kelly. Here's the deal. What I keep looking at is, okay, if they had went to these 9 games, and let's say you've got your 3 fixed opponents, LSU, Tennessee, Auburn. That means that you don't play Georgia every year. That means that you don't play Florida every year. That means that you don't play Ole Miss every year. That means that you don't play Mississippi State every year. That means that you don't play Oklahoma or Texas every year, or Texas A&M every year. So to me, it's going to wash itself out. With this 8-game schedule now, there is no you're not able to balance these schedules for fairness, if that's what you're calling it. Now, look at what Tennessee would normally obviously play Alabama every year. They would also play Georgia every year. Now, they're not going to play Georgia every year. They're not going to play Florida every year either. Guess who they're going to get to play as their fixed rival? Vanderbilt. In-state rival, Vandy. Bottom of the league, Vandy. No more Kentucky, who they've had a struggle with lately. No more South Carolina on a year-to-year basis. Right? Not going to happen. Had you gone with the 3-6-6 model, then they continue to play Florida every year, more than likely, Alabama, and then I'm going to say more than likely it would still be Vandy, right? Florida, Vandy, Alabama. Maybe Kentucky. I don't know. It would have worked itself out in there somewhere, but it would have been a little tougher there. But it would have been tougher for everybody. You look at Oklahoma with this. Oklahoma is going to continue to play Texas every year, which is always going to be the toughest game on the schedule for them on a year-to-year basis. Obviously, the years that you play Georgia, the years that you play Alabama, yeah, that may be the harder game. in the end, you never know who's going to win in the Red River game. Just like you don't know if the Iron Bowl is going to be a win for Alabama. Sometimes they lose it. I get if this is about money, because I think that's what it is. I think that they're wanting to squeeze more money out of ESPN at a time that ESPN isn't really trying to get squeezed for any more money when they're struggling financially at the moment. Do I feel like it'll probably work itself out there? More than likely. But for the first season, not going to be on. So you're going to lose out on some of the oldest rivalries. The Georgia rivalry with Auburn is going to go away, more than likely, unless somehow they work that first year into that's the year that you play that half, you know. I would hope that they work that out there. I really would. Because if they're doing this over a bunch of BS, which is what this really, if they're going to do that and stop the oldest rivalry in the South and the Tennessee rivalry with Alabama and the LSU rivalry with Alabama over that, or not play the Texas A&M Texas game for the first time in 11, 12 years. Because if you're going to take away the rivalry games, that is the lifeblood of college football at a time when you have a landscape change like we've never seen before, then I'm going to tell you that you could give a crap about these fans. And the fans should stop giving a crap about you too. Even if you don't think it's enough money, it's a ton more money than anybody else in the country's making aside from the Big Ten. And you're bitching about money? Rivalry games are the lifeblood of college football. We want to see these week to week. With a 9-game schedule, that whole thing that he just talked about of all Power 5 schools, all Division I Power 5 schools on your schedule, are you going to really do that now? Because last year, who was it that you played on it towards the end of the year? Every other year, it's like Citadel or, Tennessee State. We've talked about this a bunch. I'm sick of seeing those games for the SEC. Sick of it. Right during the middle of the freaking conference season, towards the end of the year when things are heating up, then we get to watch you play a Sisters of the Poor game every year. This is the SEC. Greg Sankey said at the first of the week that it was important that as the lead dog that you acted like it and you set the standard in college football. This is the standard you're going to set. And I'm telling you something, I think it is the standard that you just set. You're probably going to run into a situation now where the Big Ten probably going to follow your lead there and go to an 8-game conference schedule as well. Because God forbid they give you any kind of what they feel like is a advantage over them. Guys, bottom line is this. You guys better figure this out. If you care about the fans, that's something you need to do. Period. Plain and simple. You let me know what you think in the comments, guys. And this is the last I want to talk about it right now. I'm sure we'll end up talking about it around the 15th when it comes back out. But I think it's absolutely the last thing I want to say on it is this. I think it's pretty telling that the best college football coach in the history of the game is complaining and bitching about having to play a 9th game. And they're quote unquote worried. I don't care about it. The entire conference should not be worried. It only helps your strength of schedule if you play another game. So this idea that you're going to lose a spot in the playoff because of it is asinine. What it really amounts to is this. Do you care about the fans or do you not? They want to see all their rivals every season. Let me know what you think on this deal right here, how you think this is going to go, and what you feel like you want to see happen moving forward with the SEC. If it's me, I maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I've seen some different folks there on Twitter that said they don't really care if it's every other year. I feel like if it's a real rival of yours, you should play them every year. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll get right back to you on our next part. We're going to go with part 2 of this. We're going to be talking a little bit about Pac-12 realignment, some legislature stuff within Oklahoma on the new NIL rules, in the state, the Sooners land a big defensive line target in the transfer portal to come in and possibly it's a guy that they expect will push for a starting position this upcoming season. We'll talk about that and more right after. Hey, you guys all know the drill, right? Say it with me. Smash that red subscriber button. Like our videos. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss one moment of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Hey, we even have amazing pod merchandise right here in our store. Hey, while you're here, don't forget to check out all these other amazing channels and subscribe to them too.